These are always sort of tough because I'm short and I'm worried that audio saves the microphone. Thanks, Melissa, Liza, TC, and all of you for coming. A rock, a fish. Here there's breath. There are rocks, but only as an abdomen pulled apart. That red color of correction marks, cracked lips, and swellings. The people who live here, stringy men, wispy women, as if spun from clouds, they are capable of greater passions than us. One man, infuriated at his car, the lemon that had cost him his life's savings, drove it to the canyon edge and cut away the metal cord that coupled the car, the rocks. Sliding through the waters, it breathed and its gills began to whiten with air. How small the car must have looked from above, but to the fish it was as if a continent had shifted, stretched, and birthed a new mountain range. What happens next? Summers we used to go down to Atlantic City and tell people their fortunes. Under the shade of lemon trees, a bunch of us would set up camp and wave passers-by over, and come they did, at first to escape the sun, but soon a flock, each with flushed faces and quivering mouths. What did they want from us? What were they like? Well, a woman wanted to know if she would give birth. Her face was thick and scarred, the drawings of a child playing with markers, but bold, like tire marks. We took many breaks, as the spirits did not speak to us constantly, but grew tired of our stream of questions. What a pleasant time, sitting on the beach and deciding what happens next. Does the girl get sacrificed after all, or will she escape to the Aegean in time? Does the mother kill the father when he gets home, or does she go back to the kitchen? We read so many poems that sometimes we got them confused. Every so often, someone would go back home and marry the wrong person. After that, we were quiet as starlings in a cage. I was excited to actually get someone who works on the starlings to email me after that poem and point out that starlings were not quiet. She also, something about projectile and waste expulsion. Sorry. Okay. School of Taxidermy. Listen, see that boy who discovers a dead squirrel at the foot of the tree? He thinks it is worth something. He thinks he will skin it, and they will have a fair and sell it. And he tells his friend, and his friend is excited too. Then night falls, and they return to fetch the broken corpse, which is encrusted like a jewel with moss or a cake with crumbs. The maggots white, swarming, turning away the squirrel's eyes. And he does not know how to rid himself of it now that he has it. That boy is me. I was that boy. Balance. Soon after I moved to California, I felt tremors everywhere. It made for headaches and a vivid idea of how delicately each thing was balanced: bird upon sky, sky upon roof, roof upon post and lintel. What trees I saw had shifted in their sockets towards the sky, some hanging loose and some undressed by fire until black, wire-tipped, and deaf. The heat loosened from the ruptured earth was the same heat I felt once in the surgery room. With one eye cut, I saw things as a fish does. A flat world pulled in all directions by this world's tremendous current that sets down the world's balance, aligns people with doors, and throws me off the sidewalk, a tremor of mind. In less than a small touch, I crumple down, and the tea I'm holding is immersed in puddles. My body turns the waters fragrant. I thought I'd read some more longer poems than I usually do. Usually I write like really short things. I always liked long poems and readings because I could always do my laundry list and, groceries in the back of my head. So This one is, maybe I'll explain it later. How's that? Instructions received by new colony. One soldier's rifle at my back. For a minute, we walked like this, his barrel, my shirt, I leading the way, a brother showing a brother where to hide, where to eat. Nothing was wrong the night of Easter, only this bell calling us down from the hillside, its throat saying, metal for heartbeats, rise and fall of the day. Hope is lost, war is won, orange trees and candle wax burning. Here's what the soldier thought. The foot races when we were young. People would slow down to scoop up the yellow apples we would toss, crisp as a bell ringing. No, it was more like this. After the hunt, the air is heavy with birds and frogs, their lungs inflating like a bell set loose in the ocean. Go then to the place where they still sew with needles of boar bristle and build your city there. How boars are caught in the trees, some men chase, others run, imitating pheasants. You were burned once by their rope that sang like a bird. You clung to it like a boy holding a blade of grass. Now they give you mud walls and spaces between rocks, arms of trees outstretched to point the way skywards, weeds and weeds for health. They give you cities of ladders and ramparts. When you see a woman appear there, that woman, Kore, you call her, rope, that is to say, with feet tied together, you bury her. Not that way. Like you, I hated running from country to country, each place the same people, just uglier, older, as if a gigantic hand had pressed hard against their faces, fusing together bones, leaving some cross-eyed, colorblind. And yet in the plains we can feel the lake rising at our backs. Steamships that cross when fog sets over the corn stalks, the sight of pumpkins and squash, splayed on vines like exposed ovaries, bumps and all, orange, green. When our neighbor gave us zucchini, we tried for a week to get rid of it. Zucchini and bread, zucchini and applesauce, zucchini and pies. And what we think he was saying was simple. Vines, not people, follow you everywhere you go. The wish answered. Several years ago, I discovered how easily love and food are confused. When I thought I was in love with someone, but really it was a skipped lunch. Forgive me. I was young, passions being what they were somewhat equivalent, mixed up. The highest anything stars without firmament, colors huddled in the back shelf of a dark closet. And even when I got my wish, her sitting in front of me, all I could think about was cannoli, biscotti. How embarrassing, my stomach growled and my heart leapt. I actually heard that this was read at a wedding, and I find this a little problematic to be saying this about your potential bride or groom, but there's their wedding cake in front of you. I don't know, but just had to hear that. So, last night a white pigeon flew through the window and I scooped up every missile I could find, a blouse, birds, books to kill the bird that came despite rain and cold, the same that watched at the sill while my uncle hung himself at his hacienda, the same that watched my grandmother bless her sons then open her eyes in horror. The nights after her death I dreamt of nothing but the bird watching me as I made love to my white-haired professor, my body rocking back and forth as if poised to leap off a ledge, my skin growing slicker as it watched. The room is still strewn with pages, feathers, blues on the radio. This could be wartime. There's no fear. So I take cover while the rain laps the veranda outside like a living thing in need of attention. And I bring a mattress for him inside the forbidden room and lock the doors in case the owner should return. And I close the shutters, for spring is so cold that plants and sides drop white flowers onto the bed below. I'm not listening. I can barely hear him talk of the village where he was born. So overcome am I by his child's eyes, he who believes the flowers are for him, his arm unfolding toward me like a key of flesh. At night we lie awake in different beds. At night his thighs, luminous as salt from a mine. So it's funny to read things that you wrote a long time ago. The end of this book has this long prose section, and I think I wrote it because I really like the part in readings where fiction writers get to say, so here's what happens, and here's the characters, and they set it all up. And, you know, it just seemed really glamorous and cool. I'm just going to read you a little bit of it, but basically the plot, I guess, of this poem is that some people travel on a river, and yeah, that's one poet. I don't have much of a plot. Okay. It's true that you act differently now. You started eating the fish that we catch. No, there's no need. The fish here are small and bony, more like jewels than food. And your eyes shine yellow now at night like a cat's. You once told me about a dream you had, floating in the salt water, face down, tasting fish as the schools swim past. No brag. You've eaten so many fish you worry you'll sink, waiting for someone to find you. You worry you'll spend years at the bottom waiting for someone to find you, to kiss you, to cut open your stomach, and only then will the rubies and sapphires tumble out and let you float again. So if it's alright with y'all, I'm going to read some new poems. Hands and feet. Now we have come to the part of the reading where touching is encouraged. How sometimes we imagine our grade school teachers saying, keep your hands and feet to yourself, and begin to feel what it means to lie next to someone and not touch them, even though they have brought home a fifth of scotch and a carton of mint ice cream, your favorite, in the hopes that you'll ignore the deposition the next day and rest your hands suggestively on their shoulders and begin what Oshima calls the bullfight of love. But it is not yet nightfall, and still you keep your hands to yourself, and that stillness is excruciating, falling asleep, like standing in a subway car surrounded by people but unable to look at them. Only the occasional spark of body lurching against body in the dark to break up the underground sequence of letters and numbers, and even that touch prompts a mute apology and move down the aisle. That is another reading. This is the part where touch is encouraged, where the book must be opened with both hands and feet, separating out edible from inedible, the poem from its paper shell, so that when we finally read, listener, covered with bristle and ink, we will have eaten well. I think I was happy because the one time I read that people actually did start touching each other. The poetry doesn't do. Oh, yes, all right. So I teach creative writing now, and my students often ask me, you know, what to do, and so I thought I would actually kind of spell it out. So this is Ars Poetica. Ars Poetica. The new words will be spring and summer. Poems will continue to pose questions of existence, though not as probingly as before, owing to the change in vocabulary which stresses the social over the existential and having over not having. In the new poems, endings will be soft, quiet, and understated, and images will contain recycled content. Some poems may be made entirely of used rubber tires, others of canvas. Canvas and luminous will be featured. Bougainvillea, however, will be replaced by creeping myrtle and a sense of grace. Unlike the winter writing, the new sense will be light and thrifty. Those lines once celebrated for their texture of brocade will not be mourned. Instead, they will be freed of unnecessary language, as when the elimination of your job made unnecessary the word fired. That anger, the least complex of emotions, thus the hardest to write about, succeeds the topic of malaise. not disdain, vengeance, or regret, just impotent anger that the new city bears no resemblance to the old city but keeps the same name. It is like the Sicilian town of Noto. After an earthquake, citizens voted to build a town 10 kilometers over, also called Noto. Having lived here all your life, you can't find your way around. Water blue skyscrapers are everywhere, and there's a luminous river where old streets once meandered. Sorry, a bit of a cold. So actually, yeah, this is kind of a pissed off manuscript. You know, a lot of crappy things happen in the last 5 years or so since I started writing it. But to distract you from that, I thought I'd read some poems about sex, if that's all right. This is actually, so I also teach film, and this poem is, a lot of the poems here are actually titled about after films, and this, The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes, is by Stan Brakhage. It's the first film I ever saw in graduate school when I walked in late to the class, and the film had already started, and I just saw bodies being repetitively sliced open. I thought, what have I got myself into? So, in honor of that, The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes. As you can see, the warp and weft of flesh is unwoven, starting with the seam of the neck. Then the shears move through the bolt of cloth stretched over bone frames to reveal ruptured pipes, starved of oxygen, a purple-white basin of spoiled meat. Son, to recap, until you're 17, there's no touching the sticky joinery of a woman's body. When viewing lustful pictures, if your body is filmed with sweat, imagining each layer of clothes peeled off to reveal the depths underneath. Remember the zipper of the dress as the zipper of cold skin pulled open, the cold room unlocked by the surgeon's light. Empire of the Senses. Love, the back of your mouth is delicate as mushrooms, caves, or even moths that come out at night after painting sugar on tree bark, feathery, blanched, and translucent from flashlights. Had I 100 tongues, yours would be the kindest and most radiant. The last time I saw anything shine like your gums was at a pond encircled with cattails and coarse-tipped grasses on which beetles climbed, hard-shelled, and bright as hammers. I wrote that for my dentist. Okay, I think we should get going pretty soon, huh? So, yeah, well, alright. In Injury to One, the old union, slowly. In some tales, an injury shows up on the body of a statue in a temple, the serpentine wake from a dagger shunted, as if pain could be transported to the body of another. Perhaps this is why you avoid me in the middle of the night. You are afraid the pains in my back will touch yours, that pain itself might develop a way to communicate. Once, after a bad fall, your hand slid open. You found a diagram online and did the sutures yourself. Black thread, liquor, perforating the hand as if to be outside of and still yourself. And you show me this knowing how much your skin, still puckered near the thread and blue at the edges, makes me want to touch it, to reach inside and find... Do you remember the girl whose neck was attached by a ribbon? Who wants to reach inside the marvelous? Who is the first to unwrap the ribbon, and who is left behind, watching? Okay. This is actually kind of hard to read from because all these things are written in groups of 5, and I do want to eventually sell this book, so I can't read the whole thing. But the idea of the book is that a lot of them are written in palinodes, which are literally means to sing back or to take something back. The modern day analog, I think, is the correction section of the newspaper, and so the last 2 poems I'm going to read are both called corrections. Right. Corrections. When out walking, you may find faces frozen under the lake. Through a trick of light, a real face would never remain fixed and unmoving for so long. Thousands of muscles cause faces to undulate constantly like kites in the wind. Do not sing to them, prod them, or walk out over them. The faces only call to us because as ice ages, they gradually become clearer, so that like a close-up we look to them for emotions and recognition. Think of the book of memory thrown in the lake, pages curling outwards as if some hand had peeled them apart as carefully as the wings of rare insects and mounted them onto glass. How silent it must be down there. We have sent pumps out to dissipate the faces. The pumping will now commence. Corrections. Newark, New Jersey is not America's Renaissance city, as I wrote previously. That is Pittsburgh. Newark is dying and has a bleak future. A recent poem implies that I'm lonely. I'm not. My mouth is just shaped that way, small and sad looking. And due to an editing error, our dog is listed as our pack leader. This is a mistake. Our leader is the president who governs with the consent of the people. But if even people are mistaken, then I believe in amnesty. Each side to marry their enemy, ghosts to live peacefully among us like months waiting to turn thick and flush with moisture. Calendar and chronicle annulled. Unlink names from their dead and return names to where they may be changed and forgotten and used again. And faces? Faces too. Let the oceans be milk white with the accumulated light of old photographs. Thank you very much.